one of the marks of a good scientist is humility.
No. One of the marks of a good scientist is a dialectic between arrogance and humility. If you don't have,
that's a more subtle and accurate way of putting it. Yeah.
Well, no, I worry about us extolling the virtues of the humble, the meek, the self-effacing, and it's just like that's not where the magic happens.
But
the magic happens.
You have to have had the arrogance to tackle hard problems,
right? And
made some progress, but then been kicked back by something that didn't work right. And after enough of that, you develop some humility, but you still have to maintain the arrogance to get anywhere.
So, how do you feel currently about the community? Like the professional community, you have to know that they regard you with very,
well, I know what's going on. I mean, I got a lot of contempt from string theorists for getting attention, for putting forward a mathematical model of reality that wasn't strings. And it wasn't complete. It was a model that was proposed that had problems with it. And I was forthcoming with the problems in it, but I was still saying, yeah, this seems like it's making progress towards a description of reality and has nothing to do with strings. And that set alarm bells off all over the place. It set off alarm bells for either it's a threat or this guy's a complete crackpot, which is more likely. And I got criticisms for both.
I don't think, if I were to steelman their perspective, and again, you know that I don't share it, and I'm willing to fight them, and as I did when you first encountered what I called their immune system in a gentleman known as Jacques Distler, right? I'm willing to stand up for what it is you're trying to do, but I do think that we have to give them their due before we say what's wrong with their perspective. Their perspective is there are lots of constraints that one learns are very difficult to evade when you immerse yourself in standard quantum field theory. Like, they know what it is that is demotivating them. It's all the no-go theorems and the intricacies. And the reason they got crazy about string theory, first of all, I'm convinced that it was a way of evading the real problems in physics. It gave them something to do. It's like war games for generals. It's an amazing period of peace. Well, yeah. It gives you something to do to keep your chops up that is different from the thing you're supposed to be doing, right? And what they were objecting to is to say, this guy doesn't understand all the things that have to go right in order to have an improvement on the theory. Mm-hmm. From our perspective, how dare he blithely saunter forth? If we ignored all the constraints on us, we could have fun proposing all sorts of things that also won't work. That was really the responsible version of their critique. Now, the irresponsible version of their critique is, hey, we have something that isn't working very well. How dare he take something that isn't working very well and get attention,
right?
And maybe funding, or maybe destroy the sense that there's only one game in town.
Right.
And, I was separately lobbying you and them for different things. I wanted you to just say the words like, I understand these are the constraints that will have to be satisfied, and I don't have answers, and I don't know how difficult they'll be to find, but I don't want to be demotivated from the get-go. Right. So please don't immediately tell me all the no-go theorems, because any successful theory will probably have to have a period where it's flying in the face of no-go theorems. So that's what I wanted to hear from you.
Right. I believe I said those things scattered over several interviews at the time.
Somewhat, but I think that what they don't intuit is that you understand how significant the negative results are. The no-go theorems, as they're called, are pretty profound.
Right. I mean, there's a theorem called the Coleman-Mandula theorem that prohibits the unification of gravity with the other forces. And I just blew right through that because it didn't seem to apply in what I was doing.
Well, really, it prohibits naive unification of matter and force, and there's a way of evading it using this thing called supersymmetry.
Right.
And supersymmetry is this very weird thing that doesn't have that much mathematical beauty behind it. So the mathematicians know about it, they study it a little bit, but they're not bananas over it.
Yeah, I'm not either.
the natural world doesn't seem to use it in the expected way,
No.
but it does so much for theoretical physics that despite the fact that math is just kind of ho-hum on it and that the natural world doesn't seem to be using it, it doesn't stop the theoretical physics community from embracing that because it evades this dreaded no-go theorem.
Right. It stopped me from embracing it. I never embraced supersymmetry. I never liked it.
But you didn't evade the problem with it either. I mean, in other words,
I got around it.
You think you really got around it?
The Coleman-Mendel theorem, yeah, it requires as one of its axioms that you have to have, certain. It talks about properties of the scattering of particles, and you have to have a space-time in which the scattering occurs. In the theory I put forward, the space-time comes out after the symmetry breaking between gravity and forces. So it's only after the symmetry breaking happens, when the unification is no longer there.
Yeah, I'm sure
that you have a space-time. And then in that context, the theorem applies. But before that breaking, it doesn't apply.
But my guess is, and I could be wrong about this because I haven't studied exactly what you're talking about, that what's going to happen is that even with how you claim this arises in your theory, they're going to say in whatever approximation is going to be applied to relatively flat space-times close to Minkowski space, that if you've really evaded it in some super meaningful way, you should be able to tell us some theorem about good old quantum field theory in relatively flat space-time.
Right. Well, I mean, it evades it by not satisfying the axioms of the theorem.
Do you know what I'm trying to get at?
It's not evading it in some
You should be able to tell us something
way.
really new if your underlying theory truly unifies force and matter.
Right.
It would be the case that the approximation of it that is found in ordinary regions that look close to flat, right, where the usual rules of quantum field theory apply, it should be telling us something wildly new about that. Can you tell us a new theorem about how it would appear to unify force and matter in a region that looks close to classical quantum field theory? To standard quantum field theory.
Well, I mean, once the theory is advanced to the stage where you can get to that description, then that would happen. But in the initial stages, all you can see for certain is that it's not violating the theorem.
I don't know enough about how
we can talk about it after this.
Okay, sure.
But yeah,
anyway,
I hit a number of these things.
So those were I had these wishes for you, and then I had the wishes for the community, which is that they would stop being pricks about the whole thing and that they would say, look, we can't keep telling everybody who's not a string theorist that their theory is dead on arrival and keep saying, well, we know that our theory it doesn't appear to be living in 4 dimensions and appears to have a bunch of stuff that we don't want and not necessarily all the stuff that we do want. And maybe there's a huge landscape of different theories that would...
Yeah. At this point, I don't think string theory is living at all. I think it's an X theory. I think it's pining for the fjords. I think it's I've seen nothing but decline since I left this train wreck.
Well, this is the thing, is it refuses to take stock of itself, and it took a lot more minds than one.
I think that's happening.
Yeah.
Certainly the graduate students who are coming up are seeing what's going on with string theory, and they're taking stock of the field, and they're going another direction.
So